It started on a quiet Tuesday morning, but the silence didn't last long. Representative Jasmine Crockett stood before a line of microphones outside the Capitol, her expression calm but resolute. Flanked by her legal team and a handful of congressional allies, she didn't mince words. "This isn't about politics. This is about accountability," she said, raising a thick folder of documents into the air. "Elon Musk has crossed a line, and now, we're drawing one back." Just hours earlier, her office had filed a $200 million lawsuit in federal court alleging Musk's companies, specifically X, formerly Twitter, and Neuralink, had violated multiple federal privacy laws and engaged in targeted data manipulation that disproportionately affected Black communities. Within minutes of her statement, media phones buzzed across the country. CNBC went live. Fox News scrambled. Twitter, or X, lit up in chaos. Musk himself responded from his X account with a single dismissive post, "Yet another political stunt. See you in court." But this time, it wasn't just another headline. This was personal. Crockett had receipts. And Musk's empire, for the first time in years, wasn't just being challenged, it was trembling. By nightfall, the lawsuit was the top story on every major network. But it was the contents of the 137-page legal filing that had Capitol Hill, and Silicon Valley, buzzing. Inside were detailed allegations backed by whistleblower testimony, internal emails, and expert analyses. One section claimed that Neuralink had quietly gathered biometric data from social media users under the guise of neuropersonality research, without consent. The data, according to Crockett's legal team, was then fed into X's algorithm to refine user targeting, especially in political discourse zones. Another section alleged that Musk's platforms had run secret predictive behavior simulations disproportionately tested on accounts flagged as culturally high activity, many of which were linked to historically Black institutions, activists, and journalists. "This is digital redlining," Crockett declared during an MSNBC primetime interview. "Except instead of denying housing or banking, we're talking about denying fair access to truth and representation in the digital public square." The backlash was immediate. Civil rights groups held emergency press conferences. Tech ethicists and former Musk engineers began speaking out. One former X developer tweeted, "We knew what we were doing. The code didn't lie. I didn't think anyone would ever call it out at this level." Meanwhile, Musk's team remained silent. But behind the scenes, crisis meetings were already underway in Tesla boardrooms and SpaceX command centers. And Jasmine Crockett? She was just getting started. At SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, Elon Musk sat at the end of a sleek conference table, eyes fixed on the glowing screen showing cable news coverage of Crockett's lawsuit. His executives stood tense around him. One by one, advisors updated him, but the news kept getting worse. "Tesla shares dropped 6% after the market closed," muttered the CFO. "And legal counsel is advising we isolate Neuralink immediately. Too much risk exposure." Musk didn't say a word. He just tapped his fingers on the table, his jaw tight. Back in D.C., Jasmine Crockett was unfazed by Musk's online dismissal. Instead, she doubled down. Her team released redacted portions of the lawsuit online, allowing journalists and legal analysts to dissect every page. One particularly damning document was an internal Neuralink memo titled, Phase 3, Community Stress Testing, which appeared to describe experiments targeting specific demographic clusters based on online behavior. The tech world recoiled. By morning, 2 Neuralink board members resigned. Meanwhile, Congress stirred. Senator Ed Markey called for a joint committee hearing. Representative Ro Khanna tweeted support for Crockett, writing, "There's a line between innovation and exploitation, and Musk may have bulldozed it." For the first time in years, Elon Musk wasn't shaping the narrative, he was trapped inside it. And Jasmine Crockett? She released just 5 words on her account, "This is just the beginning." By Thursday morning, the storm reached the Capitol. A special congressional hearing was announced, fast-tracked and bipartisan. The focus: data ethics, civil liberties, and the unchecked power of tech moguls. Jasmine Crockett was named as a lead witness. As she walked into the chamber that day, cameras flashed wildly. Dressed in a sharp navy suit and heels that echoed confidently across the marble floors, she wasn't just a congresswoman, she was the face of a movement. Inside, the hearing room was packed. Reporters filled every seat. Musk's legal representative sat stiffly at the opposite table. Several Republican representatives tried to steer the conversation away from Musk, claiming the lawsuit was a coordinated attack on innovation. But Crockett remained unfazed. When it was her turn to speak, she stood, adjusted the mic, and calmly began, "This isn't about targeting a billionaire. This is about defending people who've been targeted by billion-dollar technology without their knowledge or consent. This is about truth." She laid out timelines. Data trails. Technical analysis simplified for even the most stubborn skeptics. And then, she dropped a bombshell: "We now have reason to believe that this behavioral tracking influenced not just algorithms, but actual political ad targeting, including in the 2024 election cycle." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Across the country, screens lit up. Breaking: Crockett accuses Musk of election data tampering. Musk, meanwhile, remained silent on X. Not a single post. Not a single defense. The silence was deafening. And the walls were closing in. Just when the public thought the revelations had peaked, a former Neuralink employee shattered the ceiling. Her name was Alyssa Brandt, a former senior software engineer with top-level access to internal data architecture. Until now, she had remained anonymous in court documents as witness B. But Friday morning, she stepped in front of cameras beside Jasmine Crockett at a joint press conference, live-streamed to millions. She looked nervous at first, clutching the podium, then took a breath and began. "I joined Neuralink because I believed in technology that could help people. But I left because I saw it being twisted into something else, something political, something unethical. I was asked to write code that could track emotional fluctuations tied to specific content types, filtered by race and political affiliation. When I questioned it, I was told to keep quiet, or leave." The room went silent. Crockett placed a supportive hand on Alyssa's shoulder as reporters erupted into a frenzy of questions. That afternoon, Alyssa's 17-page signed affidavit was released, and it matched up with key segments of the lawsuit. Her sworn statement directly implicated two top Neuralink executives in ordering the so-called behavioral demographic loop testing for high-profile political events, including the midterms. Musk's legal team immediately moved to suppress the press conference footage in court, a move analysts called a sign of desperation. Meanwhile, a growing number of lawmakers began whispering about the unthinkable congressional subpoena for Elon Musk. His empire wasn't just wobbling anymore. It was beginning to split at the seams. Monday morning. 8:46 a.m. The House Oversight Committee made it official. A congressional subpoena was issued for Elon Musk. He was ordered to appear before the committee within 14 days to answer questions under oath about data manipulation, civil rights violations, and potential election interference. It was the first time in U.S. history that a sitting tech CEO of Musk's stature had been compelled to testify under such explosive circumstances. Markets reacted instantly. Tesla dropped another 9%, X saw a mass exodus of advertisers, and Neuralink's main research partner in Zurich publicly severed ties. Inside the oversight chamber, Jasmine Crockett addressed reporters again. "No one is above the law, not even the richest man in the world. This isn't personal. It's structural. When a digital empire starts treating human beings like code, someone needs to pull the plug." The press room erupted. That afternoon, Musk finally broke his silence with a cryptic post on X: "When they fear innovation, they reach for subpoenas. See you soon, DC." The post was immediately hit with thousands of quote reposts, most laced with skepticism or outrage. The tides were turning. Once untouchable, Musk now faced the full weight of the federal government, armed not just with lawyers, but with receipts. Meanwhile, Crockett's team filed a motion to expedite the discovery process, citing ongoing harm caused by X's algorithm still being live and unaltered. Federal judges took notice. The digital empire was no longer just wobbling, it was listing heavily, inching toward collapse. June 21. The day the world paused. Elon Musk arrived at the Capitol in a gray suit, no entourage, no bravado, just silence. Cameras followed his every step as he entered the chamber where Jasmine Crockett and the committee were waiting. Every seat in the room was filled. Millions more watched live online. Crockett, seated directly across from Musk, didn't blink. She had waited for this moment, not for vengeance, but for the truth. Chairman Raskin opened the session. Mr. Musk, you are here under lawful subpoena. You will answer the committee's questions fully and truthfully, under penalty of perjury. Musk's opening statement was measured, even careful. He denied personal knowledge of any misuse of data and distanced himself from the day-to-day operations of Neuralink and X. But Crockett wasn't buying it. When it was her turn to question him, she didn't hold back. Mr. Musk, can you explain why multiple whistleblowers, across different departments, all described the same targeting protocols that required executive approval? Are they all lying? Musk hesitated for the first time. I can't speak to their motivations. Crockett leaned forward. Then can you speak to this email, dated February 3 of last year, sent from your private account, approving Phase 3 data testing to better predict real-time emotional shifts in African American user clusters? Gasps filled the room. Musk went pale. His attorney scribbled furiously beside him. I'd like to review the authenticity of that. It's been authenticated by 2 independent forensic experts and submitted to the court. That's already done, Crockett said, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. The silence that followed was historic. Elon Musk, tech king, innovation icon, digital overlord, had just been cornered, live, with nowhere to run. And Jasmine Crockett had done it with facts. The fallout from Musk's hearing was instant, and seismic. By sunset, Jasmine Crockett's questioning had gone viral. Networks looped her final line like a victory anthem. Civil rights groups hailed her as the face of digital accountability. Hashtags like #CrockettClapsBack and #MuskinTheHotSeat dominated the internet. But inside Silicon Valley, the aftershock was worse. 2 major Neuralink investors pulled funding within hours of the hearing. Tesla's board called an emergency session to discuss reputation risk mitigation, while advertisers paused campaigns across all of Musk's platforms. Meta and Google, sensing blood in the water, began publicly questioning Musk's data ethics, subtly distancing themselves from his legacy of disruption. Even some of Musk's longtime allies in the tech world began to retreat. One former SpaceX engineer tweeted, "We built rockets to reach Mars. But we never imagined he'd crash into Congress first." Meanwhile, Crockett's office received a surge of support, not just from progressives, but from centrists and even a few moderate conservatives. Quietly, members of both parties began discussing something unthinkable just months ago, a bipartisan tech accountability framework. And at its center, the Crockett Bill, a proposed legislation that would limit the ability of tech companies to use behavioral data without explicit, informed consent. In the span of a week, Crockett had gone from outspoken House member to the woman leading a national reckoning with big tech. And Musk? For once, he wasn't the disruptor. He was the disrupted. Just when it seemed the storm couldn't grow any darker, it did. 3 days after the hearing, an anonymous source sent a 2 GB encrypted file to multiple media outlets, labeled only, Neuralink Internal, Project Orbital. Within hours, cybersecurity experts cracked it open. Inside were audio recordings, Slack transcripts, and experimental logs, all pointing to a secret initiative within Neuralink. The project aimed to map real-time emotional triggers across racial groups using embedded neural tracking via opt-in mental health apps. One internal message read, "Orbital will allow us to predict civic unrest based on neural response patterns to political events." Flag critical clusters by demographic. Target content accordingly. Another, high response deviation during Crockett speeches, refine algorithm to suppress correlated noise. The implications were terrifying. Not only had Crockett and black users been digitally monitored, they had potentially been intentionally suppressed. News anchors could barely contain themselves. MSNBC called it the most invasive manipulation of digital citizenship ever documented. The Washington Post ran a front-page exposé titled, "Inside Neuralink, the Empire of Silent Control." Jasmine Crockett responded publicly with a short, firm statement. What Project Orbital confirms is what many of us already feared, that we were not paranoid. We were targeted. Legal scholars began comparing the scandal to the early days of Watergate. Meanwhile, civil rights attorneys filed a joint motion to classify Neuralink software under federal investigation for potential constitutional violations. And Elon Musk? He released a 7-word tweet that only stoked more fury: every system seeks order through chaos. It backfired instantly. Congress didn't see poetry, they saw intent. The very next morning, the Department of Justice announced a formal federal investigation into Neuralink and X Corp, citing credible evidence of systemic violations of civil liberties and election integrity statutes. A convoy of federal agents was photographed entering Neuralink's San Francisco office, seizing servers and hard drives. At X headquarters, engineers were locked out of key systems without warning. Panic rippled through Musk's companies. Wall Street responded brutally. Tesla's stock plummeted 18% in a single day, the worst drop in its history. Neuralink's board voted to suspend all research operations indefinitely. Several advertisers declared permanent withdrawal from all Musk-affiliated platforms. For the first time, even some of Musk's own legal team began preparing for separation. Meanwhile, in Washington, Jasmine Crockett stood before a sea of microphones once again. Her tone was steady, even as the world buzzed with chaos. This isn't a takedown. This is a reckoning. A moment where we choose whether technology will serve people, or control them. She introduced the Digital Sovereignty Act, co-sponsored by a growing coalition of Democrats and Republicans. The bill promised strict regulation on biometric data collection, algorithmic transparency, and harsh penalties for covert manipulation of marginalized groups. Public support soared. Late that night, Musk posted a final, haunting message to X before going silent: empires don't fall. They implode. And just like that, one of the loudest men in tech went quiet. Jasmine Crockett, once underestimated, had not only taken on the richest man in the world, she had cracked the foundation beneath his empire. 6 weeks later, the world looked different. Elon Musk officially stepped down as CEO of Neuralink, and a federal oversight board was placed in control of the company's operations. Congressional hearings continued, but now with tech executives from other companies testifying under oath, warning that if not for Crockett, they might still be doing the same. The Digital Sovereignty Act, once seen as impossible, passed the House with overwhelming bipartisan support. The Senate was expected to follow. But for Jasmine Crockett, it was never about headlines or personal glory. In a final primetime interview, she sat down with a PBS journalist and reflected. People said it was political. That I was chasing a billionaire. But I wasn't chasing him, I was chasing truth. Her office now had triple the security. Her inbox overflowed with messages, from civil rights leaders, whistleblowers, even mothers who'd never known their child's social feed was being manipulated. As for Elon Musk, he retreated from public life, his posts sparse and cryptic. Some say he's working quietly in the background. Others say his era is over. But what no one could deny was this: the day a Congresswoman stood up, armed with nothing but documents, truth, and conviction, the most powerful man in tech flinched, and his empire cracked. And the world saw it happen, live.